minutes, and if we go over, then that's absolutely fine. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Consultants Corner, the big question. So just to set the scene, I've got Chris here with me and Kat.
Hi,
Kat. So the industry has changed over the last 4 years, and all parties are aware that no one company has all the answers and that a more collaborative and partnership approach is desired. Research shows that aligning objectives provides better answers to solutions. So one of the desires is that the industry does work more collaboratively as we face unique challenges across each sector. So Chris, the question for you this evening is, how do you feel this can best be achieved?
So collaboration and partnership, that's the big question, is it?
Yes.
I would like to think that that's nothing new. It is something that certainly in my world has been there for a very long time, because I know that the best catering contracts work when a client is working in partnership with their caterer and collaborating in all things. So things like, I hear a lot about Vested over the last couple of years, which is all about collaboration and partnership, being on the same page, not having a combative relationship. Do you know what? 30 years I've been saying the same thing, banging my head against the brick wall. Good news is, and I was talking to my colleagues about this, we've seen a big change, I think, since the pandemic, because what's got to underpin collaboration and partnership is honesty and reality. So what we're seeing is caterers are being honest, and they had to be honest in the pandemic, being honest about what they want out of a contract. So they had to go to their clients when the client closed the business down or whatever they did and say, look, we have a business to run, we have people to pay, we have overheads, we only pay for them from you, Mr. Client, help. And that's actually, I think, been really good for the industry. So what we're now seeing in tenders, we're seeing people putting higher management fees in and earning money just through their management fee, which is what we've always asked them to do. And I'm doing a project just at the moment, actually, a big old client. And we went to the caterer and said, look, the client, everything has changed for this client. It used to be a commercial contract. They're now running on cost plus management fee. They need to know what that cost is. Before we can discuss what we do with the contract, we've got to understand the true costs associated with it. Then we can all work together in a collaborative way to move forward. That particular project, the contractor came back very quickly and said, yeah, do you know what? We've been earning money here, here, and here. Oh, and actually, do you know what? As we've ramped up, it's too much. We're going to give some back, and we're all going to work together. I had another client a few months ago where the contractor did the reverse. And here's what can go wrong. So I'm banging on a bit here, aren't I? Here's what can go wrong. So that client, they'd moved to cost plus management fee, same thing. And we went in and we looked and we said, oh, actually, did you know that your contractor's earning quite a lot more money on this contract? See, unlike this week's one, that contractor twisted, turned, was difficult about giving us information, and they've destroyed their relationship with the client. The client was very, very unhappy because we got there in the end, but the contractor took so much time doing it, there wasn't that collaboration and partnership feeling that if the contractor just, do you know what, we knew what the outcome would be. We know what the game is, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Just roll over and work with your client and be honest. So that particular job, the client's gone out to tender, he's got a bad taste in his mouth. Will he change, won't he? I don't know, he might, but the contractor's not in as good a position as they jolly well should be. Because it was all been about money, and it's just been painful, like pulling teeth. And that is not how a collaborative partnership agreement should work. We should have honesty and openness and transparency.
And I think aside from the cost, it's also got to do a lot with the service delivery, right? So cost is one thing that can be destroyed with poor collaboration and partnership, but I'm sure you get a better service delivery through collaboration and partnership. The more you share and the more you're willing to hold each other's hands through a process.
Yeah, well, how can a client understand what the financial implications of service changes are, which is the interesting bit, of course, but they need to know, what's it going to cost me? Or what profit am I going to make? And if they're not dealing with clean figures, they can't do that. So to my mind, although it's a bit boring, first thing is, let's clean up the figures. Get it out of the way, boring. Let's just do it. Now, let's talk about service changes. What can we do? Can we open a unit here? Should we close that one there? Should we move this from here to here? Should we spend some money building something new? Because goodness me, we're making more money than we thought. Things are not as bad as we thought because we can now see the reality. And then it suddenly gets interesting. We start talking about top line. How can we drive sales? How can we delight customers? Which is what we should be doing, rather than grubbing around, fiddling around with well, it's not grubbing around, it's a lot of money, very often, a shed load of money. And which is why contractors can be a bit difficult about it.
So can you tell us, is there a prescriptive way, an approach that you take to collaborating and the partnerships with your clients?
Yeah, always the same. Start with clean numbers, clean them up, however you have to do it. Then understand, have good financial reporting, good management information so that we can understand. So if you've got I got one of these recently as well. So we had a multi-outlet client, huge, absolutely huge. They were spending millions on their catering every year. And they had all these catering outlets all over the place, too many, but anyway, and loads of them. They didn't have P&Ls for each one. So you couldn't see where they were making money and where they were losing money. They could see the big picture. They knew they were spending X million on their catering. What we needed to do is to say, well, what could we do with this? How can we make this? Maybe they're happy spending that much, but how can we get better value? How can we make sure the customers are delighted? How can we spend money in the right places? They didn't have P&L, so you couldn't see where you should be spending your money and where you should be focusing. Luckily, they did have all the data. It was all in the wrong place, though. So if you don't know where your sales are, what's driving the sales, you don't know where to focus your attention. So one of the first things they should have done was to understand all of that and then say, well, look, that one, we're hardly selling anything there. Should we close it? What are the implications if we close it? And they may say, no, do you know what? Because it's business critical, it's worth subsidizing it. We don't mind doing that. But that one, well, actually, why have we got that open? Let's close it. And if anyone complains, we'll just say, well, do you know what? We were taking 10 quid a day. Don't, maybe they've got a loud voice. And that one over there, goodness me, look at the huge sales there. Let's invest in that. We've got loads of queues. We've got lots of problems. Let's make it better. And actually, hopefully get a better bottom line out of it as well. So I'm speaking as if I am very financially driven because you know what? It always comes down to money. It has to. Because without money, nothing happens. So that has to underpin everything, all the sexy stuff.
You mentioned vested earlier. Do you actually use vested in your business?
Oh, there's a red rag to a bull with me. Vested.
But then, actually, it's quite interesting for the audience to hear your point of view on this. I know people have differing views, but I know Julian, who's been on before, Julian Frisch, is very passionate about vested. But interested to hear your views.
He's right to be passionate about vested. Do you know what? The principles of vested are bang on. They're all the things that we're talking about. I have a massive amount of time for working like that. I just don't understand why you're going to be paying someone for it. I just don't get why vested copyright exists. It just seems completely pointless to me. Well, although, no, it's not completely pointless. I'll tell you why it's not pointless. I think that big organizations in particular need to have a system. They can't just do it. They've got to have it set out in a system, and they will pay someone like Vested to do that. It just seems madness to me, but that's the world we live in. So I know we'll sign up to Vested, therefore we'll collaborate. And all the things I've been talking about already are then underpinned by Vested, and there's a system and a structure and all the rest of it. which if you're an organisation that needs to behave like that, I guess it must work. But it just seems completely bonkers to me. But then I suppose my job ought to be bonkers as well, oughtn't it? You shouldn't need a consultant. What you should be able to do is your contractor should be able to talk to the client, and they should all work together all in a very friendly way and cut someone like me out. We shouldn't need to exist, but we do.
It's exactly what Simon said in the comments. We've been doing it for years, and it's called relationship.
Yeah, we can. There's a danger of us getting in the way of relationships, and I know contractors sometimes worry about that. We try and listen to contractors and give them as much face time with potential clients as we can, because we hear from them that we shouldn't be getting in the way of that collaboration and partnership. We should actually be nurturing it. And I think Vested actually has a system in there to allow people to do that, to encourage people to do that. I'm a lot more informal than that, I suppose. So yeah, the consultant should be there, should be planning a process, and within that process, so for example, we've just added into our tender process and some additional face time while contractors are preparing their bids, if clients will do it, to come back and ask client questions about halfway through. Now, problem we have is not every client wants to invest that amount of time in it. So we'll say to the client, you'll get a better project if you do that, but the client's I'm too busy. I've got you doing that, Chris. You go off and do it. I haven't got the time for it. We'll say, well, you need to give them a site show round, you need to meet with them, spend some time with them, and then we still get clients saying, no, do you know what, I'm going to do it on Zoom.
Simon, happy birthday, Simon. He basically says he can't believe he's here on his birthday instead of having champagne.
Yeah. Well, go away, Simon. Have champagne while you're doing it.
He's so dedicated. He's a real fan of Consultants Corner. Simon, love you to bits.
Hi, Simon. I'll try and entertain him on his birthday.
So with collaboration now, I mean, and tendering is a real area where competitive dialogue is used as a form of tendering. What are your views about that as a way?
Well, I think in the tenders we run, there always have been, always will be competitive dialogue. In private sector, that's kind of how things work. I think we've slightly moved away now from clients just doing what they like. Oh, I like that one, so I'm going to choose them. Even though, do you know what? That is what happens sometimes. But that has to be supported by facts. Public sector, I'm in the middle of one at the moment actually who are doing it with competitive dialogue. It's really weird because it's not really, it's also structured. We send this out and they send that back. They think it's dialogue, it's not really. I mean, when we run a tender, when we get towards the end of it, we have a presentation, we always do reference visits. Public sector, even when they're doing public competitive dialogue, can't do those things. They don't go on reference visits. They don't have presentations, they have clarification meetings, which are presentations really, but they have to be very careful how they behave in those. So it's a very formalized system. And I'm not convinced that it works, but what it does do is it gives a perfect audit trail, which I think public sector have to have, because we all know how the media pick them apart if anything goes wrong. They're terrified of being challenged. Which in our industry, I don't really see contractors challenging decisions. They want to move on to the next project. I saw one a couple of years ago where I do think the client behaved badly and the contractor challenged it. They didn't get anywhere. All they did was they destroyed any potential future relationship. So they tend not to challenge decisions. So competitive dialogue has to be, I suppose, if you're public sector, it still has to be quite formal. Yeah. Whereas I think private sector, which is the vast majority of what we do actually, we're really strong on audit trail. We score everything. We share it with the unsuccessful and successful suppliers in tenders. It's really super thorough. We got one at the moment actually where the client did their own score. They did their own tender abroad. And they said, here's the scoring that we did. And they had 12 things that they scored. I thought, but you asked 30 questions. And my view is, if you ask 30 questions, I've got 30 things to score. But they they stepped back and looked at the bigger picture, which is right, that you need to do that at some point. I actually think our job should be to go into the granular detail of what we do, because that's what it is. Catering, we all know the devil is in the detail. If you miss that, you're going to be all over the place moving forward. So spending the time understanding exactly what it is you're reviewing and you're evaluating is absolutely critical, both financial and operational. Otherwise, it will come back and bite you on the bum.
Simon's got a question. I'll just pop up here. But this is a form. It is a form of collaboration, though, isn't it?
He's right. He's so right. So they don't only bring it to the press. So we're because we've got so many tenders on the go at the moment. We're doing loads and loads of reference visits. And it was interesting. I did 2 this week, and one of them, the caterer brought loads of food. It wasn't ridiculous, and it was enough because quite rightly they wanted it to look great, and it did look fabulous. I took pictures. It was lovely, but there was a lot left over at the end. The other one I thought did something quite clever. They brought something along. And they said, you know what we decided to do today is we're going to show you what we can do. If someone says at 11 o'clock in the morning, I've got a working lunch, we're going to go to the counter and we're going to dress up what was on the counter and show it to you as a working lunch. And they still like 3 portions of everything. So 3 of us going around. And I thought that was quite clever. So that was quite good on the food waste thing. There still was waste. And by the way, there's huge problems in our industry, particularly in London, with people booking functions for 25 people an event and only 5 people turn up, and the caterer brings food for 25 people, and if it's in a function room, it's probably there for 3 or 4. You can't do anything with it, and that's not the caterer's fault. That's another area where client and contractors need to collaborate. But back to your point, Simon, bringing food to presentations. I mean, we've cut it right back. I quite like it because I always like a bit of food, and I think what it does in a presentation is it informalizes it. I'm a great fan of when they want you to look at the food. Should we all get up and go and have a look? Because we're all sitting in a room all day long, presentation after presentation. Let's get up and go and have a look. But the food should be there for a reason. And we tend to control that quite tightly and say, look, bring along, and if that client's interested in working lunches, bring along vegetarian working lunch. So show us what you mean. And it should be to the cost that you've shown in your tender. And just bring along 1 portion, that's fine, and bring along this and bring along this. Don't go mad. And that way, I think you can control it. Or we do have quite a lot of clients say, don't bring any food at all. Makes it a bit boring, given that we're in catering. But I get why. I mean, one of the clients I was mentioning earlier, they love to say, oh, we're going to do a tasting. I mean, really?
It's old-fashioned.
It's old-fashioned. It's meaningless. They don't really mean a tasting, of course. What they really mean is they want to go and look at the service the contractor. But if you say that to a contractor, what they'll do is they'll get their best chef, or they'll even pay an external chef to come and produce something that tastes and looks fabulous. And that's not what you're buying. What you're buying, you're buying food that tastes good. It's got to look good. It's got to be marketed well. You've got to have great service sitting around it. Financially, it's got to stack up. A tasting is not a tasting. That's a meaningless thing to do.
Do you think then, in terms of transparency, that's a real key cornerstone of a partnership?
Well, actually understanding what the service office get. You've got to see it. You've got to see it. You've got to see it. You've got to feel it. So that thing in public sector where they won't go on reference visits really bothers me a lot. I understand why they won't. They say they won't go on them because it might influence them. It might not be relevant. They'll hear something different from one contractor to what they hear from another. But you know what? Man up. Come on, get a grip. You should be managing this. You should have quality people managing a process where you are recording it all and it's clear, because it's a complex service you're buying. So you need to look at it, you need to see it, you need to understand it. I find it terrifying when people buy, and we do it happens a lot. People buy a contractor without ever seeing them in operation. They're buying this promise, maybe a 5-year contract, a promise on what they've written. They've copied out a load of lovely menus and recipes from somewhere from the internet, and that's what we're going to give you. Really? They can't even take out references with other clients. I just find it's very worrying that public sector, that's what they have to do. I understand why they do it, because they get criticised all the time. Oh, you've been out for a lovely lunch. That's what, because that's what people perceive we're doing when we go on reference visits. Oh, you're having a lovely lunch. And you probably do have a lovely lunch, but that's not what it's about. We should be grown up about that. We did one recently. We actually had a client, Hooray, who didn't even mind having a glass of wine. And the reference visits were great fun. So we had lunch and we had wine. It was like the old days. And do you know what? It didn't influence that client one little bit. They can give him as much wine as they like. It wouldn't influence him because he's a grown up.
So Chris is asking how do you see AI working in food service?
Great question, Simon, as I would expect. It's all over there now, isn't it? AI is everywhere in our industry. It's tremendously valuable. It's not just AI. I think the whole technology piece is massive now. So we've got the back of house, which has been around for a while now. And I'll give a call out to Compass Group, who years ago set up their thing, The Source, whereby you log on and your recipe with your allergens and your nutrition and your costings are all done for you and electronically, and they will guarantee that you'll get your financial result and you'll get a standard. And that's nothing to do with AI, of course. What the thing we're seeing most evidently, and I was at a site yesterday where they were doing it, where you've got self-scanning. So you take your tray or you take your box. I saw someone putting a box of salad under the camera, takes it, says, yeah, that's £4.65. Off you go. So that kind of technology is making a massive change. I know there are people who say, well, we're a people business. Don't you want to pay someone? You take your tray up and they'll, well, to be honest, most of the time, if it's busy, you're not interacting very much with that person. And I think there's still room for that, just like in the supermarkets. I don't think there's any supermarkets taking people away to get all together, are there? But actually, for me, when I go, I don't want to talk to anyone. I've gone in there to buy an apple. I don't want to talk to anyone about it. Thank you very much. Just can I scan it and go? And I think that's true of some people at lunchtime in my world, in food at work. So yeah, AI and technology, everything's EPOS based now. We've moved now from clients supplying the technology to the contractor bringing it with them and taking it away with them when they go. And there's some great new business. There's a Danish business that are launching in this country called Campla. Do take a look, because they're the new kids on the block. They're all very young, very enthusiastic, very driven, and they're right on it when it comes to technology. And they're moving fast.
I've had them on. I've had
Peter on.
Jonas on the other podcast.
Oh, did you? They're great, aren't they?
In that space. So, any final words, Chris, in terms of partnership collaboration? What can the audience learn? What's your big message?
So my big message and it's to catering contractors, is don't be afraid to ask me or to use your common sense to say, look, we need X% out of a contract. Look at our accounts. You can see that's what we need to make a profit. Don't be shy. Now, I will always push you because we're always going to want a deal, and you've got to place it into the context of all the other things around it, and you're in a competitive situation. But let's not be shy. Let's not see these 3 and 4% management fees anymore, because no one can live on that. If we go much over 10%, we tend to have a bit of a problem. But in a small contract, maybe you can, and in a competitive situation. But let's be honest. Let's take that off the table, and let's talk about the interesting things about how we can add value to the service and collaborate with our clients to run a much better service and lovelier food at a better price for the customer.
Chris, thank you. Kat, do you have any questions for Chris before we close?
No, that's all. It was great to hear about the margin that, the people have to make money, businesses have to make money to give you the good service, to train people, to have the technology.
We all do. Absolutely right.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And thank you, Simon, for your input today. I'm sure we'll have you on for the big question in the coming weeks. So, Chris, how can our audience get a hold of you? Just a reminder.
So www.sternconsultants.co.uk or chris.stern@sternconsultants.co.uk or my mobile 07802 863 847.
That's brilliant. It's been great having you on Consultants Corner again. Thank you so much.
Lovely
for your
to see you guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Cheers.